Welcome if you're just joining us. This is The World This Week, and joining us this week is Craig Kapitas of Quartz and the Atlantic Monthly. Also with us, Christopher Dickey of Newsweek and the Daily Beast, Paul Taylor of the Reuters news agency, and Claude Guibal of Radio France. Sometimes you wish, in fact, that you had more than 4 seats in this studio. The Sunday Telegraph's Anne-Elisabeth Moutet sent us this tweet before we went on air. Anne-Elisabeth commenting on the convincing performance of Mitt Romney at the first presidential debate. She said, "Darling, you didn't even invite me to comment on Mitt's divine surprise." Now, Anne-Elisabeth, of course, referring to Romney's performance at that debate Wednesday evening in Denver, Colorado.
Well, thank you very much, Jim, for this opportunity. I want to thank. I met this very spirited fellow who claimed to be Mitt Romney. But it couldn't have been Mitt Romney, because the real Mitt Romney has been running around the country for the last year promising $5 trillion in tax cuts that favor the wealthy. The fellow on stage last night said he didn't know anything about that.
All right, that was not Mitt Romney. That was a very feisty Barack Obama. Craig Kapitas, that's not the same Barack Obama that you saw during the debate, though.
Oh, no. I thought I was watching a 90-minute advertisement for Prozac. I don't care anyway how you want to cut it. Obama did not look presidential. He did not look like he wanted to be there. He is a pathetic debater. He actually sounded like a university professor who was stoned on some sort of controlled substance. I was really in shock. And you know what the real acid test of how shocking it was? When we were doing it here in the studio that night, after the debate, all of the guys in the control room came out, and they were in shock. They said, "Did we actually see that?" And when you get the control room guys freaking out over something, you know that something big has happened. And I just couldn't believe it. I mean, why?
I don't think it's that complicated. I mean, I agree with you that he was awful. I mean, Romney was not so good. Romney was better than anybody expected him to be. But the problem was that Obama never called him out on anything.
Oh, yeah.
Romney was just standing there coming out with one prepared BS line after another, and he never gets called out on it. And I can tell you, from the point of view for people who've supported Obama for a long time, one of the big issues with Obama is that he's not aggressive enough, is he doesn't go after it. He's all Mr. Bipartisan, even though the Republicans are trying to screw him every time he turns around. So to have him doing that in a debate is particularly painful, but it looks as if he made a conscious decision, and maybe he had to take a Valium in order to do it, that he would not attack Romney. He never attacked Romney. He was ultra-civilized and professorial with Romney, which was, in fact, completely soporific, and Romney steamrollered him.
And Paul Taylor, we can take a look at Mitt Romney, what he did right. He has appeared as, well, shall we say, awkward at times on the campaign trail. And most observers said he actually looked human.
I will not reduce the share paid by high-income individuals. I know that you and your running mate keep saying that, and I know it's a popular thing to say with a lot of people, but it's just not the case. Look, I got 5 boys. I'm used to people saying something that's not always true, but just keep on repeating it and ultimately hoping I'll believe it. But that is not the case, all right? I will not reduce the taxes paid by high-income Americans.
One wondered at that point whether he was accusing his children of being liars. But, yes, it's clear that one of Romney's real problems throughout the campaign has been to portray himself as a human being. That he's found that incredibly difficult to do and repeatedly failed at it. And this time he succeeded. He clearly, this was his last chance to really turn the campaign, if it is going to turn. And I'm not actually convinced it is going to turn.
Reuters, in fact, has a poll out on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't claim to understand the findings of the Reuters poll, which is that sort of independent voters actually have sort of shifted slightly towards Obama since the debate. hello, hard to understand how anybody, on the basis of Obama's performance on Wednesday night, would have been more convinced by him than they were before. Chris will maybe tell me why I'm wrong. But, the economy is starting to pick up. The unemployment numbers today are good. The unemployment level is down below the sort of that psychological 8-point-something threshold at 7.8% now. I think that the momentum probably is still with Obama, but certainly he didn't do himself any favors on Wednesday.
I see the gentleman sitting. I see the gentleman sitting next to you, shaking his head.
All right. Well, before he shakes his head, I want to get in one more bit of retaliation. Romney gave him what, in soccer terms, we would call an open goal. He said basically that 47% of the American electorate were kind of scroungers, no taxpayers, and living off the state, and he could essentially insulted half of the electorate. And Obama didn't call him on it in the debate. And now, of course, that's given Romney the opening to go out and say, of course, I made a mistake, I was wrong, shouldn't have done that. And now, Obama will now look churlish if he raises it. But so, to me, it's a mystery as to why he did that.
This is no endorsement for Romney, and it's no endorsement for President Obama. But Obama looked weak. Does not look like a leader. I'm not saying Romney does, but if that was the President of the United States, the man in charge of the free world, and then either he has some splaining to do, and we have a lot of problems. It was. I mean, your guy Cameron could have given a better performance. A toy poodle could have. It was just a pathetic outing for the leader.
Even you could have.
Even you, Chris, and I could have. We could have. Chris makes a wonderful point though about how he didn't follow up. But it's even more so, Chris. We were doing the counts, how many times someone said something, and as you know well as a former debater in college, the one thing you never say in a debate, the fact of the matter is, or the truth is, we do it here on TV because it's a nice segue, but you don't do it in a debate. We counted Obama doing that.
Well,
the fact of the matter is, eight times instead of doing precisely what you suggested.
Did he just get cocky?
Well, I think partly there is an arrogance, a level of there is a kind of an arrogance. There is a kind of an arrogance that is definitely part of this, but it's also related to the facts of the matter. And I think that if in fact there's a little inching up with the independents, it's because of the facts of the matter. I mean, basically Obama's position was, I shouldn't have to debate these issues because it's so obvious. It should be clear that the numbers on the Republican side don't even begin to add up. It's just nuts. And that was his tone. And he repeated, he would keep coming back to this, and that's one of the things that made it so tedious. But that's his attitude. Don't you guys see this? But if he'd even said that, it would have been better, because it would have been more human. Instead, he was professorial, saying, please don't give me these tired arguments that are devoid of facts.
All right, speaking of the tone, there's the debate and there's the spin that follows the debate. And remember, as Chris was rightly pointing out, it has been a pretty bad week, bad month, in fact, for Mitt Romney going into this. Polls showing Barack Obama pulling away in key swing states. Suddenly, the Republicans were grinning from ear to ear.
The president asked Jim Lehrer if they could move on to another subject. I mean, you don't ask to move on to another subject if you think you're winning. You ask to move on to another subject because you know you're getting your brains beaten in.
Or maybe because Jim Lehrer was doddering through the whole
Jim
thing.
Lehrer, the moderator.
Oh, that's unfair.
No, it's not. He was horrible.
No. I'm not. No, Jim.
I know you could do better than him.
Oh, I know you could too. I should have just let Dickie and I go at it. He could have taken Obama. I could have taken Romney. We would have both lost. Jim.
François Picard moderated.
That would be good. That's what we need.
Already the set is getting out of control. But
Offer them France 2024 with its mass audience.
What's interesting is you knew that it hadn't gone very well for Obama when, because of the time difference, Thursday morning Paris time, lots of liberal-minded people in the U.S. are complaining about the moderator on Twitter. There really is the post-debate spin. It's not just obviously about what the pundits say on television, like you just heard there, the former mayor of New York.
But what I'm wondering, do you really think this kind of poor performance may really affect the vote of Americans?
It doesn't have to affect that many votes. It has to affect some key votes in some key states. Most Americans have already made up their minds. I've already voted on an absentee ballot. So, in fact, I don't think it's going to affect lots of votes. But if it starts to close up in the polls, then every vote is going to count in certain areas, and it could affect those.
Well, it's even more than that. The world had its first chance to see these two leaders on a global stage, and there's no question that the President of the United States looked extremely weak, if you know nothing about the politic of it. And Mitt Romney, to someone who's sitting somewhere else in the world, who's not following the U.S. elections, he looked like a global leader.
He looked like a pitch man at a corporate
Well,
meeting.
no,
I mean, maybe that's the same thing these days.
Well, but he came across. He came across better. He's not.
He did, absolutely.
And there's two more debates to go. Can they change?
Yes, but it's different. The one's going to be a town hall, right, Chris?
Yeah, the next one I think is a town hall.
I don't think it's possible for Obama to perform that badly twice again. So I think that the next debates will at least be more even, and perhaps Obama may score a win. But you can't say an election's over a month before polling day.
Right.
And the economy's not great. It's certainly it's improving, but the question: do Americans feel better off now than they did 4 years ago? I don't think many people will be rushing to say yes, I'm much better off.
Well, although a lot of polls are showing that Americans feel better off than they did a year ago or 2 years ago, and if the trend line is in that direction, and at the same time you have unemployment going down,
we will.
And Obama's argument is, I
thing.
inherited such a dreadful situation, and
we'll continue, of course, to follow that trend line all the way to our election night coverage. To misquote a famous song, it was 50 years ago today. The Beatles releasing their first single, Love Me Do. It would only climb to number 17 on the charts, but the Fab Four would never look back. And on that very same day...
So, first of all, we're bringing out the Stamp Out Detroit campaign. What about the Stamp Out the Beatles? What about it?
that very same day.
Yes, the release of the first James Bond movie, Sean Connery opposite Ursula Andress in Dr. No. What's surprising is that these two brands have really lasted 50 years and look to last another 50, it seems.
And they've aged as gracefully as I have. They defined my childhood, and now they define my kind of late middle age.
It's interesting because visitbritain.com is using James Bond to lure foreign holidaymakers to their shore. British culture, big business. A report by the UK Culture Ministry claims the UK is the largest creative sector in the EU. Relative to GDP, probably the largest in the world. Paul Taylor, what is the secret?
We're just so sexy. I say this as a man who lost 2 octaves this week. There was a period of explosion. There was a period of where the vibe, the youth culture, came out of Britain, out of Liverpool, out of Manchester, out of London, it was an extraordinary moment, and then it kind of it interacted with what was happening in the United States and a lot of the British.
But hold on, I'm sorry to say this to you. The UK had just lost its colonies, and it was no longer this empire in which.
Yeah, but I mean, what has that got to do with it? The La Nouvelle Vague, the great French cinema, came just as France was losing its colonies. Maybe there's something good about decolonization and the creative arts. Discuss.
Claude Guibal, your thoughts?
No, it's just post-war era. But what is very funny for me, because I'm under 50, so I don't know this time.
Good.
It's a kind of nostalgia middle-aged men have. On that time it was very conservative. If you take the Beatles or if you take James Bond, it's male word. There's no woman. It's very conservative. It's the group of guys.
British music, Harry Potter books. There's British culture. It exports very, very well. Why is that?
Don't know. Well, it's
Maybe it's because they can't cook, so they.
They cook very well these days.
you know, as long as you have Sean Connery, you can export very well. You know.
But look, what do they export? They export history, fantasy, and violence. And that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, but there's style.
But that sells. That sells.
All right, Craig, you're just off the Eurostar.
Oh yeah, well, it was great because standing there in St. Pancras, you see Figaro, which has James Bond on the cover today, 50th anniversary. I pick up the tabloids. There's no mention of it. They're so cool about it. They don't even mention it. It's all over the TV, but and you see things in London, little Beatle things and James Bond things, and there's a new James Bond movie coming out, and you're right. It is a middle-aged fantasy because. Believe me, I can say the three of us here, we all wanted to be James Bond when we were kids, and if we said we didn't, we're lying, okay? But what's really interesting, my children like James Bond. There's just something so timeless about what Fleming did. What was it? Gadgets, toys, girls, intelligence.
Sex and violence.
But in the original,
the sex was
books,
never,
the books were just, it was, Aston Martins. It was stylish. They were having a contest in London today. Vote for your favorite James Bond, and I was hearing discussions on the train and in the streets, some of the cafes, people arguing who they thought their favorite James Bond was, and there was the deference vote for Sean Connery because he was the first. But I heard people say, no, you're not allowed to vote for Connery because that's a vote from the heart. Who was your favorite? And there were real discussions.
Did anybody
on
vote
this.
for Roger Moore?
No.
Okay.
And that's where we'll leave it for the world this week. Roger Moore, who's plugging his own book, I think.
And boycotting Fortnum and Mason at the moment. He's staging a boycott of Fortnum and Mason because he has a grievance against their foie gras.
All right. Well, so they preferred the Scottish nationalist Sean Connery over Roger Moore.
That's
but anyway,
right. He was actually a
Craig
Tory,
Kapitis, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well for joining us. Paul Taylor, Claude Guibad, and Christopher Dickey, thank you for joining us here for The World This Week.